We can start now our conversation with Jean-Christophe Chevallier from Ydès, a leading law firm in France. We are very pleased actually for the collaboration we have with Ydès and with Jean-Christophe in particular. And we are going to discuss in just a minute about how to handle data subject access requests. So the first question, Jean-Christophe, is what is actually the right to access?
First of all, thanks a lot, Andrea, for organizing this espresso discussion. And then hello, everybody. The subject access right is defined under the Article 15 of the GDPR. It is the right to know the information what kind of information that administrations, public or private bodies, and or any companies hold about any data subjects. And this is something that has a very role in the GDPR, because the right of access allow the data subject to exercise further rights, such as the deletion and rectification of their personal data, and also because this is an omitted and incomplete disclosure is subject to fines.
Thank you for these context. So which are the main difficulties of data controllers for what concerns data access requests?
Actually, when a data controller receives an access request, he has to be very careful about first of all the identity of the requester. So he has to check whether the is legitimate or not, and has been made by the good person. So once he has checked that, he has also to check whether he's dealing and is really processing the personal data of these data subjects. So that means that he has to check his files. He has to identify the different type of data he's collecting, their volume, because if there is a big volume of data, he has to understand and to determine whether it will need sometimes or not, because the data controller has also to complete a very short term to respond to the data subjects. Actually, the GDPR mentioned that as a principle, you have to respond very quickly, but there is a maximum timeline which is authorized, which is 1 month. If there is a complexity that raise up into the discussion, into the review and to check of the personal data, you can extend this period of 1 additional month, so until maximum 2 months. But if you decide to extend this, you have to advise and notify the data subject of this extension and the reason why, and within a 1 month period. So you can't wait without doing anything. And last but not least, the cherry on the top of cake. If we are talking about health data, we have a 8 days period to respond, and sometimes we have a 48 hours to respond. So this is always the reason why we advise our clients that if they are using, let's say, generic email address to handle the data subject access rights, and this email address has to be checked very often. This is not only something that shall be read generic and not used by the people, by the company.
That's a very wise advice. So there are very short time frames. If an organization is requested to access data, can it also ask something itself? So before responding, is it possible?
Yeah, for sure. First of all, as I mentioned, we have to check the identity and ensure that the people that is behind this access right request is the real data subject. So the French Data Protection Act that has been modified for the GDPR mentioned that you can ask for the identity card, the ID card, and or any proof that show up that this is really you or not somebody else that is finding this request. And in a digital environment, when you exercise your rights, you can fill in a form and you can put a form and request to authentify for the data subject to authentify itself, especially via login and password, or directly via his account if you are talking a merchandise, a commercial website, or shops and so on. So this is a good way to postpone this time period and to ensure that you are not facing up, let's say, a robot or something else. And if there is a reasonable doubt, you can also ask additional documents about the data subject in order to check exactly, again, the legitimacy to find this request.
Thank you, Jean-Christophe. So if you ask for some additional information back, does this mean that this freezes the initial deadline, or?
No, this does not. I mean, you have pointed out, let's say, a flaw in the regulation. Because it is not mentioned that you can suspend and unlock the time limit. To my opinion, it does suspend it, because you have taken into account the request, you have asked for additional information, so you normally can postpone the delay to ensure that you will not have to face any issue or complaint with the data protection authority, especially when we talk about big fines like the GDPR has implemented. I would suggest that you not exceed the 2 months, the maximum 2 months period, if there is a doubt or there are some reasonable doubt that show up that demonstrate that you need additional information to be able to respond.
This is really important for the potential clients out there. So no matter what, even if the situation is not clear, it's better to provide a temporary answer or a kind of an interim answer rather than no answer pending the response from the requester. That's very good. And I will take just 1 minute of your time more concerning your experience with these kind of requests. What is the main takeaway, in your opinion, that should be given to clients? And if you want, maybe you can also mention to us as a second question in this case, which are the main trends that you can see in France in this current situation?
Usually, according to our experience, when we receive some access right requests, it's because we are external data protection officer for our clients, and it's because also they are not used to handle it. So we immediately take it into account, and we immediately contact the client to determine and to determine whether this person is in the files and what kind of personal data are processed and the purposes and so on. And then the first step that we do is we respond immediately. We acknowledge receipt of the request, and we take we reserve our right to ask for additional information. So again, we combine everything in the first answer. So this will be, to me, the best way to work with such kind of request, because you should not keep silence face in front of it, and this will be a proof of good faith. For the data protection authority, because if you don't respond, then the data subject can file a complaint before the DPA, and once the complaint is registered by the DPA take the lead into account, and they contact you immediately, and they ask you the reason why you did not take into account this request, and they also ask you for your internal procedures, policies, if you are handling a data subject rights, not only right access, but all the rights policy, management policy, if you are handling also the data breach policies and so on. So let's say the final advice that I would say is never take a data request with negligence. Always take care of it. If you cannot respond, try to respond something. Even if the data are not in your files, you can respond that the data are not in the files, because that will close the request.
And Jean-Christophe, thank you very much. We came to the end of our time, unfortunately. It was also important to learn that Ydès provides also for DPO service. So Jean-Christophe, Thank you very much. Merci beaucoup.
Thank you so much. Bye, Andrea. Thank you.